Hi, my name is Lisa Clegg and I'm a maternity nurse, mum of 3, nanny to 1 and author of The Blissful Baby Expert and The Blissful Toddler Expert. In my job as a maternity nurse, I advise parents all over the world on feeding, sleeping and any area of development really. They say it takes a village to raise a child and a lot of us don't have family or friends close by when our babies are born. So we wanted to create a place where we can all come together, rave about the good and bad parts about being a parent without any judgment, and we hope that it makes our listeners feel like you're not alone and you can use the tips and advice to help with your babies and toddlers. Please be aware that you may on occasion hear some swearing or graphic language. Obviously we will try and keep that to a minimum, but we just wanted to put the disclaimer in just in case we have a little drop every now and again. If there's any subjects you would like us to discuss or any regular features you would like us to do, please send us an email or contact me via Instagram. All the details are in the podcast description and we hope to hear from you soon. Today, our guest is Emma, come onto the podcast to join us to tell us all about her experiences of motherhood. Hi, Emma, how are you?
Hi, I'm well, Lisa. How are you?
Good, I'm good, thanks. How are your boys? They're getting big boys now, aren't they? Not so
They
little
are.
anymore.
Yeah, they're 9 and 6 now, which makes me
Wow.
feel very old.
It's scary how fast it goes, isn't it?
I know. It's such a cliche, isn't it, to say it, but it really, really is true.
It really does. Well, how do you think I feel now? I'm a nana.
I know. I can't believe it. It's good
I
though.
know. It is. It's amazing, and as tough as it is, the amazing parts of parenthood far outweigh all of the tough sides, don't they? So
yeah, they sure do. You have to
right.
remind yourself of that.
Daily.
Particularly if you're homeschooling, which, I've sort of it's a bad memory now. They're back in school.
Hopefully never to happen again.
Oh God, please no more. I love teachers. I think they deserve medals, really.
I think we've all developed a vast appreciation for teachers since homeschooling, haven't we now?
Definitely.
So I just wanted to kind of go into your experiences of, when you had the boys and chat about what you did. Now, I know with your eldest, Jacob, we didn't meet until, what was he, probably 4 or 6 weeks old, around that age, wasn't he?
Yeah. By that point, I think I was probably on my knees sobbing, and just, completely bewildered by what was going on.
Yeah, you'd
So
hit the wall of tiredness.
I'd hit the wall. I'd gone over that wall, and it wasn't good. So I guess I come to motherhood a bit later than maybe some. It's like sort of later 30s, although that's not really. It's by the by now, isn't it? Really, people
Yeah.
have kids whenever. So but yeah, and I didn't really. It's just a kind of shock when you're not wasn't used to being around lots of babies and didn't really have much of a clue. I think really what was going to happen, and so he was still quite little, and I just had loads of issues with like feeding and sleep and all sorts of things like that, and just felt, I think, a huge not as much support or any idea what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So hence the call.
Yeah, and obviously he was quite small then, so nobody expects tiny babies to be sleeping long periods of time or anything like that. And you were breastfeeding, weren't you?
Yeah,
So
I was I think it's just like your first child. You're you've read probably like a zillion different books that have confused you, and there's like an image in your head that you're going to be able to easily breastfeed and it's all going to be snuggly and lovely and quite straightforward, but it really wasn't. So but I was determined to kind of carry on, even though It
Yeah.
wasn't, thank God for land snow, like lanolin.
Nipple cream.
I still use that now, like on kids like cuts and grazes. And
Absolutely.
oh my God, like
Yeah.
Isaac the other day, now he's 6, he keeps licking his lips, which is
Yeah.
driving me mad. So he's really sore. So, the lanolin goes on. He doesn't like the taste of it, stops licking his lips all the time.
No, it's amazing stuff. I always tell people it's not just a nipple cream, it's like a
No,
lifelong tool that you
it
can
is.
use it for. It really is. You can use it
It
for all
is,
sorts. And because
definitely.
it doesn't matter if they, thumb suckers and finger suckers. Lauren's a thumb sucker. So in the winter, her thumb will get all chapped because it's cold and she's sucking it, at night times. So we do the same. We've got the Lancino in the house and just rub that all over it a few times a day. And within a couple of days, it's healed. There's a mum
Yeah,
hack before we get to the mum hack
I
feature, you
know.
see. We've got
I
there
just I
already.
I just came across it. I was like, "Oh my God, that's just like a wonder thing." Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've digressed now.
Yeah. It's always the way when you start talking about children.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So Jacob was what you nicknamed when I first talked to you. As what did you nickname him? He was a.
God.
Do you
Oh, what
remember?
was No, I don't even remember. Was it
He was snack dozer.
snack dozer? Yeah, that's it. He'd like have a little bit of milk, doze off, and then wake again in like 10 minutes. So he
Yeah.
never would sleep, for
No.
very long at all. And I think that partly driven me again, to the wall
Yeah. And you
with
were doing
that.
that 24 hours a day, weren't you? Overnight as well, and in the daytime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just thought, oh, we'll just carry. And I can't remember if I was expressing at that point, because there's always this idea that you don't use a dummy or any kind of pacifier, and that you shouldn't express in case it messes up your kind of milk flow. So I God knows how I didn't get mastitis, because I had
Yeah.
like milk,
Lots of milk.
a
Yeah.
lot of milk.
Yeah, and that seems to
Yeah.
be the advice, doesn't it, at the moment? And it's still, that was 9 years ago when Jacob was small, but that's
Yeah.
still the advice being given now. Don't
Yeah.
give them a dummy and don't pump or give them a bottle because you'll
Yeah.
affect breastfeeding. Obviously you had Jacob and we'll talk about how we kind of worked on that anyway. But obviously then you had Isaac and we started a dummy and bottles from around 2 weeks, didn't we? And
Yeah. I mean,
you
that's
and
just was a totally different experience. I don't know whether it's to do with the birth process as well. Jacob's birth was very, I was like induced, and it just seemed to take days before. So, and then he had ventouse delivery. So it was kind of like, it was a difficult, birth, and it was
Mhm,
just protracted. Whereas Isaac was, he was a planned cesarean, and that was because I had a low placenta, so there was no other way of,
mhm,
delivery. So it seemed to be much calmer experience. But I guess it's like your second child as well, so you kind of, a bit more. And he just came out, and immediately like fed calmly, and then like, it was just like a completely different experience second time around.
yeah.
So and being able to express, and use the dummy and everything, again, that just made just a huge difference. Obviously you're recovering from like major operation with cesarean, so I'm not saying that's easy because
No.
your whole core strength is gone. You can barely like walk up the stairs. But I think it was just a calmer way of kind of like coming into the world,
Mhm.
whereas Jacob's was definitely not like that.
And
So
also probably your mindset with your first baby, it's all very scary, isn't it? Because you've never done this before. You suddenly
no.
being given this baby and somebody's going, okay, good luck. Bye.
Yeah, exactly. Pop him on your boob, it'll be fine. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Like,
Yeah.
I was exhausted after Jacob. I remember saying to people when I was pregnant, and it was like, that you're going to have to be induced because he's not coming out. And I'm like, can't you just leave me? I'm quite happy very comfortable, he's in there. I think it was all a bit, it was kind of a sort of I don't know, just the unexpected, just
Yeah,
really didn't feel prepared.
yeah,
Um, yeah, and I needed more sleep after the
yeah.
long drawn out experience. But then that's it. That's it for sleep, isn't it, really, in terms of like, you know, well, maybe when they're teenagers, I don't know.
Well, you know as well the difference between the first and second, or even just once we started implementing more of a structure with Jacob,
Yeah,
which meant he got fuller feeds. That was the crucial
yeah,
thing, wasn't it? We weren't doing the snack dosing because you understood a bit more about kind of the breastfeeding and trying
yeah,
to keep him on for as long as possible. He then got the more important hind milk to fill him up, which then
yeah.
meant his sleep was of better quality anyway.
Yeah, and just being able to like just expressing, and I was always like my milk flow was always pretty good, so that again that made like a world of difference to be able to, hand on that milk to Toby, my husband, and kind of like, be able to just not have a baby strapped to your boob like 24/7.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the biggest questions I'm always asked constantly is, can you establish a routine and drop overnight feeding with a breastfed baby? Is it even possible? Should
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm
totally possible. Yeah. I mean that definitely. Again, that I just kind of struggled early on without that sort of routine. I think I just kind of floundered around and just didn't know what I was doing, and again that sort of unsure attitude, you kind of exude that to your own sort of baby. And I think again, once we kind of settled into a bit more of a routine, I became more comfortable with it. And it's about your sort of mental health, isn't it? And that attitude, kids pick up on all of that, even if they're
yeah.
tiny little babies. So, I think, yeah, it just helped enormously.
Yeah, and also understanding what is possible. That's a lot of the advice is it's very normal for your baby to feed every hour, every 2 hours, day and night. So in your head, if you're reading this sort of stuff online, you kind of look at the baby doing that and think, well, this is what you should be doing. This is what I've just got to put up with, and we're supposed to do, because a lot of the information out there is telling you that's normal. But then when you look at the other side of it and see that some babies who are getting more structure are able to go those bigger distances by making sure they get full feeds and making sure they're not getting overtired and structuring the feeds and naps. And it's not an overnight thing, that. It's a gradual,
No,
slow process.
yeah,
Um, and
that
it's
was
something
it.
you work on.
You've got to stick, you've got to stick at it. And sometimes you will have days where things don't exactly go to plan. And I remember looking back through like my old like diaries, because we keep like I used like kept a log of all these things. And then it'd say explosive poo at like and you have to go in and do one of those like stealth changes at the same time as trying to make sure they don't like fully wake up.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're all things like that would happen in the middle of a nap or something, and you're like, no, not the poo. So yeah, you have to still have that flexibility, but it just like that routine just gave me like an anchor to for us all to stay a bit saner, and
Yeah.
to be able to manage it and enjoy that, like your baby, and enjoy that time. And I
Yeah.
think kind of without it, I would definitely be, in a crumpled heap somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the other thing was, a lot of people and a lot of the information will say with a breastfed baby you should demand feed. Well, that can mean any manner of things, can't it? But what having a routine in your case, having a routine, did that mean that you ever felt like you couldn't give him a top-up feed if he was due? If you thought he was unsettled, he was unhappy, you tried the dummy, and you think, actually, do you know what? I think he does need a top-up feed. You didn't ever feel like you couldn't do
No.
that? No,
No,
exactly.
exactly. And there were times like, if we'd gone away somewhere or something, or if he was like teething and you knew he hadn't taken like a decent enough feed at whatever time,
Yeah,
you just knew that like a quick whatever, like a little feed would just, get him either having another nicer, like a more restful sleep for
yeah,
him rather than this kind of like constant, you know, sort of disrupted, like waking, and then they're not really settled. That's
no.
that's the other thing.
No.
So yeah,
It just helps you understand a bit more about what their cues are telling you when you've got that, like you said, the anchor on a daily basis of going, right, these are the times I'm going to aim for full feeds, and I know he needs to be napping probably every hour and a half of awake time maximum.
yeah.
And you've got that structure to kind of roughly go by, but then it makes it easier to know what to do in between if they are unsettled.
Yeah, and sometimes I'd do like a split feed. So, he'd have one boob and then like say if we had to go out and do something, and then so I could do it that way. It was
Yeah,
like, you can have one now and then you'll have the other when we get back sort of thing.
yeah,
So that was, again with Isaac, who I fed to like 8 months, breastfeeding, because he was much more chillaxed, really. He was such an efficient feeder. He'd be
yeah,
done in like minutes. So, like I could do things like that. And like when we would go, so we've done lots of trips to America for family, so like long
yes.
haul trips. Being able to like breastfeed on like a plane like that, again, it was quite straightforward to, just to keep them going. So yeah, no, it's totally doable. You just fit it in, and you've got those anchor points that you can, you structure it around.
Yeah, and white noise you found as well was a game changer, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's like, I think, like for Jacob, well, there wasn't all these apps with like white noise
No,
back like 9 years ago, whenever it was. So yeah, so white noise, I'd always heard that was a good way of kind of settling babies, but I didn't really believe it until like we discovered the Hoover and like putting the Hoover on, and also the hairdryer. But I can't believe like that wasn't like great thing to be putting the hairdryer on, like to in order
no.
to sort of settle in for a long time. Yeah, the Hoover, and then finally we found a CD with like Hoover noises and hair dryers and all sorts of things. Now most people have this as like an app, right, on their phone.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I had an old boom box with like a CD player in it, and that CD just worn out. That was completely worn out. Yeah, and he would
It,
just sleep to that for
yeah.
ages. Yeah.
I remember that so well. I remember on one occasion talking to you and going, "Oh, how was your night last night?" And you said, "Oh yeah, yeah, he was a bit unsettled last night, so I put the Hoover on at 3 o'clock, and he went back to sleep." And I remember saying to you, "Sorry, what?" You put the actual Hoover on, and you said, "Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That was so like wasteful, isn't it? Of like energy, and like and like the bills. God knows, like the energy bills couldn't have been good. But like, yeah, plug the actual Hoover in, and then just let it go. Like the noise. And God, Toby and I must have just been like collapsed somewhere, because it's not like we weren't far from his bedroom. So, but we must have just gone, yeah, whatever it takes.
yeah." If you
And
need the Hoover on, you have the Hoover on for the rest of the
got
night.
got to have the Hoover on, yeah. And then thank God we found the CD. But then
Yeah,
the only thing is, then I became a bit obsessed about having that sort of thing, and you've got to kind of like, it's those props, isn't it? That you can't. you shouldn't always rely on, because then like we'd go away and I'd take like the CD player with me and a CD and go and start to sort of freak out. Have we not got anywhere we can play the CD? Which, yeah, ultimately you just got to get them used to sort of sleeping in a travel cot or something else. So, oh
Yeah.
dear.
I mean, eventually it kind of all pans out, but obviously now we have apps and we have portable light
Yeah.
noise machines, which is great. We didn't have all of that 9 years
No,
ago, did we? So
no,
the Hoover and the
no.
hairdryer were the only options, or a CD once you found it. So,
Yeah. Fan
no, at least,
heater at one point as
oh
well. I think
gosh.
they had a thing for a fan heater as well, and I'm like, God, no. What on earth was I thinking? So,
You do what works, don't you? Whatever kind of makes them sleep.
oh dear.
I was going to ask you though, you briefly touched on it a moment ago about advice on long haul flights. I know your
Oh,
husband's family live in America, don't they? So you've had to do lots of long haul flights. Me personally, never gone more than 4 hours distance with my
oh.
children. The thought of turning their body clock upside down terrifies the life out of me. So I've never done it.
Oh my
But
God.
you've done it multiple times and you've found strategies and things that work. You're always our admin mum on the Facebook page, aren't you? That we always go, Emma, here's a
Yeah.
question for you.
Yeah.
Long
That's
haul
it.
holidays. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, I like our other family lives in America, so you obviously you're going to go and visit, and we're sad, obviously, not to have seen them lately, but we would go when Jacob was like, yeah, he was he was less than 6 months old, and then we've always gone at least, yeah, when the boys have been growing up. So you just I think it changes. So when they're small babies, you've just got to make sure you've got that space where you can have a little bassinet and everything like that. And all you really need to do is kind of feed them through the flight. And it was pretty straightforward. But obviously on the flip side, you've got the time difference to deal
yeah.
with. And again, that's where you have to just kind of, depending on how long you're there, you just have to go with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if you're there for a few weeks, it's okay, because you can gradually each day adjust them to the time. And we did silly things. Like, again, we'd take like the baby bouncer that would clip onto like the door frame. So just because we knew when they wake up at a certain time, could put them in the baby bouncer. I'd lay on the floor, he'd be like bouncing, wearing himself out, and then I could put him back to bed,
Yeah.
because it's like the middle of the night or something. But
Yeah.
that was like a good way of like getting out of his energy, and then he'd be tired, have a little feed, back to bed, and things like that. And then when they got older, I think the worst time to fly is when they're like 18 months or like walking. They're too young for like staying engaged by watching a movie
Yeah.
or being on, whatever device. And they just want to walk. And
Yeah.
all you can do is go up and down the aisle and just be, constantly walking them around, and then trying to get them to sleep is impossible because they can't get comfortable. So that was the key time that we tried to avoid going on the flights. Now, because they're a bit older, it's quite straightforward, because they'll just watch movies for like 10 hours
Yeah. And then
and
just
be like,
those.
and then when you get there, you just, everybody has a nap and a sleep, and you just kind of gradually adjust. The one of the best investments I had was for like a buggy that was really good, in like really lightweight buggy that folded up super quick, and you could stow it as hand baggage, so it would go in the overhead bin,
Mm-hmm.
which was great, because as soon as you get off the other end, they're knackered and they don't want to walk, through the sort of checkout terminal. So you would whip out the buggy, and I'm sure things have moved on now, but this one was like for mother care, which is, so I'm sure there are other versions that are
Yeah.
now available. And that was like one of the best sort of investments. And then just having massive load of spare clothes, like just take lots of spare clothes with you because, they're sure to spill something or vomit or like just like a range of things that you have to be prepared for. I'd like just make sure I was like ultimately prepared, like a
Yeah.
military operation. Have
Yeah.
all these things, have the spare clothes, the new toys, that I would get out at strategic times to keep them going,
Yeah.
which you could wrap as well. So they're unwrapping little bits, and then I'd have like a general bag for putting all rubbish in, because it's just the stuff gets lost, and you don't want to end up with their most precious, like cuddly toy left on a plane
No.
going back to United Kingdom when you're in the other end of the world. So yeah, there were loads of things like that. But our kids didn't have like iPads or tablets either. We were like we're not going to let them have that until homeschooling, and then we were like, they're having an iPad now, I can't cope anymore, and they just needed it for school. So
Yeah.
we didn't have any of those sort of devices to kind of keep them going. But I would recommend taking anything like that.
No, that's great. Thank you for the tips there. A couple of our regular features that we started off with, but if anybody else thinks of any others, we can add to it. So the first one was most embarrassing parenting moment.
Oh,
Have you got
God.
any that you can think of or not?
Oh, like so many, but like most of them involve bodily fluids probably, or like really, like Isaac, he's quite loud, and he's said so many inappropriate things, like just because he's like pointing things out in the street, like look at that woman's, whatever. And I'm just like, oh, just keep it in your head. When do they keep it in their head? There must be a point where they stop voicing like, oh, look at that man's hair, or oh god, yeah. So he's quite embarrassing. But like, and then once we got locked in the basement of the Fitzwilliam Museum because Jacob like pulled some lock on a door. So there's like various ones. I think the most embarrassing, what does involve like long haul flying, but there's another where that's quite, yeah, it's not a very easy one to listen to. So the other one that I was thinking of was there was a time when we were coming back from a trip up north. We'd gone up to Northumberland for Toby's work, but we thought let's combine it as a family holiday. And it was like, it was like one of the worst holidays we've ever had because like everything went wrong. Like on the way up, it was a 10-hour journey in a car with kids, and we'd stopped off somewhere. One of them had stood in dog poo and then happened to touch that dog poo and put it in their mouth.
Oh
Like,
my
what
God.
the hell? So when we got to the like place we were staying at, which was an Airbnb, which was disgusting, Jacob projectile vomited everywhere because of the dog poo incident. Then the Airbnb we were staying in, I mean, it was not clean, and so it had like disgusting sheets, and so I was like not happy about that. We actually tried to tin foil the windows in there to get the to black out like
Yeah.
we're supposed to. Anyway, so everything went wrong with this holiday, and we decided to like not stay very long. We were like, let's just call it quits and go home because this is not working out. So we got back in our car after a few days, and the trip back was horrendous. It took us 14 hours to get from like Northumberland back down to near Bury St Edmunds.
Oh gosh.
And via various like traffic jams and everything, we'd stopped off somewhere else at a really seedy hotel to try and get something to eat with the kids. And then we got back in the car, we're slogging on, we're going to get home, we're going to get home. The kids fall asleep eventually in the back of the car, and then ahead of us speeds a police car and shuts off the A14 road that we're on, right? We all have to like stop, and we witness a drugs bust in front of our car, right? Massive load of police. It's all going on. There's a
God.
lorry parked next to us on the A14. We're stopped. Everybody's stopped at a standstill. this drug bust happens. They get carted off. So we think, great, we can all start on our journey again. Except our car doesn't start. We're now in the fast lane on the A14 with a backup of traffic behind us, and we can't move anywhere. And it's like night time now. The kids are asleep because they haven't witnessed any of this. So we're like, oh my God, what the hell are we going to do? We're like really panicking. The car is just not starting. In the end, I have to try and get the police. Anyway, to cut a long story a bit shorter, eventually we get breakdown and we get a nice policeman who turns up, and he says, do you know what? Your car is not moving anywhere. It's going to have to be towed, but I'll do you a favour. Come in my police car. I'll take you home, because you don't want to end up at some like garage in the middle of the night with kids and luggage. So he takes us home all the way back to Woodbridge and Place. And then we get home finally. It must be like 2 a.m. by now. And the kids are sort of like, Isaac's sort of fallen back asleep and Jacob's just about semi-asleep. So we have to get them back up to the house. And the policeman, very kindly, he carries Isaac in his arms, while we're struggling with luggage and Jacob and everything. And just as we're like so thankful to him, and we're like, oh, thank you so much, Isaac lets out the most enormous fart in his face. Then you would and he's sort of, because it's like one of those, he's like asleep. And then he just like farts in this policeman's face. The policeman, bless him, he goes, better out than in. So, at least he'd probably seen worse, to be honest. But yeah, I think that probably tops like most embarrassing moment. Anyway, that was like a saga, that trip, never to be repeated. And I got that car scrapped because it was like, it just wasn't going to go anywhere.
Not to be trusted anymore.
Not to be trusted. No, it was toast, that car.
Well, so next feature that we've got is a hack. We have talked about a couple of parenting hacks already, haven't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
And obviously you've given some hacks for long haul flights as well. So dummy was one of the ones that we said was quite helpful at the start. Yeah. It's a good way to be able to test, I found, if the baby's genuinely hungry or they just want a bit of comfort sucking. Because I found if they were genuinely hungry, you'd put it in, they'd suck it, and then they'd kind of go, there's no milk here. Whereas if they were just looking for a bit of comfort sucking, it would calm them, and that helps to stop you going into that snack feeding cycle, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, no, that was a good one. Yeah, and the lanolin is a definite. Yeah, keep it in your cabinet. You'll need it.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Socks on the hands we had for a while as well. I used to put like socks on his hands.
Oh,
to stop him from scratching his face, bless him. But there again, there's probably something better than socks now. There's probably like baby grows with like hand things to stop them from, surely somebody's invented that now.
Well, they always had scratch mitts, didn't they, years ago? But they fell off, didn't they? Which is why we did the socks over the baby grow. But yes, now most baby grows have the little thing that you can pull over the hand, which is amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah, saves all the socks. So, well, we've chatted for quite a long time, so I think we will have to go now. But thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really lovely to catch up with you and talk again, and hope that everybody's found all the tips and advice really helpful.
Oh yeah, just patience and perseverance. That's the mantra. Just keep going and just treasure all those moments, even the embarrassing ones.
Yeah, we'll all laugh about them in years to come. They will be the things that we'll remember, along with the special memories as well.
Definitely. Then I can embarrass my kids with them at least. So there's a bit of payback there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you, and I'll catch up again with you soon.
Take care. Thank you.
Care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you again, Emma, for joining us today. We hope you all found the tips and advice helpful. Obviously, if any of you guys have some stories or features that you think would be fun for us to use each week, please contact me, either email admin@theblissfulbabyexpert.co.uk or via Instagram, blissfulbabyexp1, or drop me an email via the website. We hope to speak to you all again soon. Bye for now.